Morning, I'm Jeff Chard. I'm part of the worship committee. After 20 months, we're back inside our church. We are limiting attendance today for appropriate distancing, abundance of caution. But everyone who wanted to be here in person is here today. So welcome to those here, welcome to those on Zoom. Yesterday's email has the link for you to let us know if you want to be here next week. You can look that up. And our intent for the foreseeable future is for Sunday services to be here in person and on Zoom, also later in the week on our YouTube channel. Our tech evolves every week. This week we have new cameras, new lighting, faster internet. Whatever isn't 100% great this year, we'll learn from that. And we'll try to make it better next week. The worship committee plans all aspects of Sunday services. There are approximately 5 of us right now. And most of those 5 do other church things too. We could really use some help. You want to know how you can help, and or if you have ideas for Sunday services, please let me know. In the words of Marilyn Felowski, come whoever you are. We welcome you. We come here for different reasons, to find community, to speak spiritual and personal truths, to question, to nurture heart and soul, to be nurtured, to explore new ideas, to find comfort, perhaps to find the answers to some of our bigger questions. We welcome you. We know you come from different places, different religions, different beliefs, different backgrounds. We hope you will find comfort, connection, challenge, and love here. Our congregation acknowledges that the land on which Utica is situated is the ancestral lands of the Oneida Nation, one of the original nations of the Haudenosaunee, or Iroquois people. If you're joining us for the first time, please let us learn more about you and connect us with you through our newsletter, if you would like. There's a link in the chat to a form that we hope any visitors will fill out, and we hope you will stay for informal conversation and breakout groups after the service via Zoom. Our speaker today is one of the most spiritual business professors that I know, probably the most. Alan Hall is with us this morning. Welcome, Alan.
The call to worship this morning is from the Namchak Tibetan Buddhist community. It's easy to lose track of what we are doing. We can ask ourselves, how am I existing in this moment? Or, how is the world around me existing in this moment? To find the answers, we examine our body, mind, feelings, and surroundings. We can do so at the beginning of each day and from moment to moment throughout our days. Come, let us worship together.
1,000 times, though you've broken your vow 1,000 times, though you've broken your vow 1,000 times. Come, come, whoever you are, wanderer, worshiper, lover of leaving, ours is love narrow than love of despair. Ours is no caravan of despair. Come, yet again, whoever you are, wanderer, worshiper, lover of leaving, ours is love narrow than love of despair. Come, yet again, of despair. Come yet again, though you've broken your vow 1,000 times, though you've broken your vow 1,000 times.
The words for our chalice lighting are from Judith Quarles. At this hour, in small towns and big cities, in single rooms and ornate sanctuaries, many of our sibling Unitarian Universalist congregations are also lighting a flaming chalice. As we light our chalice today, let us remember that we are part of a great community of faith. May this dancing flame inspire us to fill our lives with the Unitarian Universalist ideals of love, justice, and truth.
They All Saw a Cat by Brendan Wenzel. The cat walked through the world with its whiskers, ears, and paws. And the child saw a cat. And the dog saw a cat. And the fox saw a cat. Yes, they all saw the cat. The cat walked through the world with its whiskers, ears, and paws. And the fish saw a cat. And the mouse saw a cat. And the bee saw a cat. Yes, they all saw the cat. The cat walked through the world with its whiskers, ears, and paws. And the bird saw a cat. And the flea saw a cat. And the snake saw a cat. And the skunk saw a cat. And the worm saw a cat. And the bat saw a cat. Yes, they all saw the cat. Yes, they all saw a cat. A child and a dog and a fox and a fish and a mouse and a bee and a bird and a flea and a snake and a skunk and a worm and a bat. The cat knew them all, and they all knew the cat. And the cat walked through the world with its whiskers, ears, and paws. Then it came to the water. And imagine what it saw. The end. That was They All Saw a Cat by Brendan Wenzel.
Good morning. I am Alan Hall, and I'm honored to be the speaker of the first in-person service at this church since the COVID-19 pandemic began. Before I begin, just a word of caution. Please do not be fooled by my accent. Some people say that I sound like I just got off the train from my native Texas. But actually, I first attended this church 43 years ago. In the lyrics of John Sebastian, the names have all changed since I hung around, but those dreams that have remained and they've turned around. I want to begin with two brief readings. First, from the book of Exodus in the King James Bible, chapter 32, verse 1. And when the people saw that Moses delayed to come down out of the mount, the people gathered themselves unto Aaron, and said unto him, Make us gods, which shall go before us. For as for this Moses, the man that brought us out of the land of Egypt, we wot not what has become of him. Second, a koan attributed to the Zen master Lin Chi. If you meet the Buddha, kill him. Scholars say that rather than physically killing anyone, the phrase is better understood to mean put him aside or forget him. So what does the story of Exodus have to do with a Zen koan? Quite a bit, I think. They both, in their ways, illustrate a common flaw in both ancient and modern civilizations. The desire for a concrete, tangible representation of ultimate truth. In other words, an idol. In the case of the ancient Hebrews, the people did not want to wait for a set of rules that would enable them to begin crafting a civilization. They wanted something they could see and touch, even if it was just something they had made themselves. Similarly, the Zen master was saying that a physical Buddha would be a distraction from the contemplation that is the goal of Buddhism. So, even if you somehow meet the real Buddha, pay no attention to him. This focus on physical things is called idolatry, the worship of idols. Idolatry can take three basic forms. There are objects, there are people, and there are words. Perhaps the most famous of the object idols is the golden calf associated with the book of Exodus. The ancient Hebrews were the only people of their time who did not worship idols. Perhaps one reason for the prohibition against idols was the same as for the prohibition against eating pork. Neither large statues nor pigs are very portable, and they would be a threat to the nomadic way of life that was essential to the early Hebrew culture. Large idols were found in cities, which were regarded as dens of iniquity, just as they are today by many rural people. As the industrial age created individual wealth, collective idols were replaced by individual ones, leading to the materialism of the consumer age. A satire of modern idolatry is found in a Janis Joplin song when she sings, Lord, won't you buy me a Mercedes-Benz? The irony of this song is that by the time of her early death in 1970, she had enough money to buy a whole fleet of Benzes if she had wanted to, but Janis preferred Porsches. Perhaps the prize for the most ironic idol belongs to the Bible itself, especially the King James Version. Witnesses in courtrooms and elected officials being sworn in place their hands on the Bible as if this would ensure their sincerity. Some evangelical preachers will wave a copy of the Bible around while they speak to give their words extra authority, even if what they are saying has little to do with the Bible and may directly contradict it. The irony is that a book containing a prohibition against idols has itself become an idol. People who are idols can come in two forms: celebrities and cult leaders. Celebrities are usually harmless. People still make pilgrimages to the shrine of Elvis Presley in Memphis. Before Elvis, there was James Dean, and before him there was Frank Sinatra, and before him Rudolph Valentino, and I suspect there were many others before them. Worship of these idols may result in wasted time and perhaps wasted money when their devotees collect artifacts and relics, but mainly they are amusing distractions. I don't know of anyone who has died from worship of Elvis. But there are also human idols who become cult leaders, and these can be more dangerous. Religious leaders like Jim Jones of the People's Temple and Marshall Applewhite of the Heaven's Gate cult were responsible for mass suicides. More recently, there are James and Ron Watkins, the father and son, who are believed to be the founders of QAnon and are perhaps the most dangerous people in the world that few have ever heard of. And of course, there is Donald Trump, who meets the most important requirement of cult leaders, having a group of people who follow their instructions unquestioningly, regardless of how bizarre or dangerous the instructions may be. At least one person is known to have died after taking a poisonous form of hydroxychloroquine after Trump suggested it might prevent COVID-19. Who knows how many thousands died because of Trump's refusal to endorse masks, social distancing, and other preventive measures. Finally, there are words that can serve as idols. Words become idols when they are considered to be directly from God and therefore perfect, eternal, and unchangeable. Ideas and the words that express them come from people, and they are just as transitory and imperfect as the people who speak and write them. Let's consider one example, the 10 Commandments. When you consider them objectively as a set of rules rather than as something sacred, they are either obvious or designed to address an immediate problem. If you're going to have a successful civilization, you cannot have large numbers of your people murdering one another, or stealing from one another, or chasing each other's wives. Any sensible person could have told Moses that, and he would not have had to climb a mountain. The second commandment prohibits the making of any likeness of anything in the heavens or on the earth or in the seas. In other words, no paintings, no sculptures, and no photography. The purpose of this commandment was to keep the people from falling back into idol worship and losing the essence of their religion and their culture. Most fundamentalists who claim to adhere to the literal interpretation of the Bible conveniently forget this commandment. Otherwise, they could not, in good conscience, carry a driver's license, a passport, or any other photo ID. Almost all sensible people recognize this as a commandment that was probably justified at the time, but has no relevance now. Like many people, I have a collection of high school yearbooks and a few trophies with figures on top, but I have never been tempted to worship any of them. Similarly, many people consider the U.S. Constitution sacred and perfect, even though its authors obviously did not intend it this way, since they provided a mechanism for changing it, and they themselves began to change it almost as soon as it was written. As its most serious imperfections may be, its cumbersome mechanism for passing amendments. Some political analysts believe it is now impossible to pass an amendment, given the realities of the political parties. This is especially troublesome given the fact that many basics of the Constitution were written specifically for the purpose of uniting the colonies in the 18th century. Many people who ridicule the United Nations for giving Paraguay the same vote as the United States in the General Assembly see nothing wrong with giving Montana the same number of senators as California. Perhaps the most notorious part of the Constitution was the famous 3/5 Compromise, which specified that 3/5 of the slave population of a state would be counted in determining the state's representation in the House of Representatives. Even the most fervent believers in the Constitution today would not admit to thinking of any person as 3/5 human. This is just one more of the compromises which made it possible to unite the colonies and attain independence, but which has no relevance to the present, except perhaps to remind us of the faults in our history. I could go on. I haven't even mentioned the Second Amendment, which, if read literally, would entitle everyone to own atomic bombs with no licenses or restrictions. The Constitution was a very good document for solving the immediate problems of its time. Personally, I believe the Founding Fathers would be spinning in their graves if they knew that more than 200 years later, we would still be trying to govern our nation with what they had written. Perhaps the only useful function served by the administration of Donald Trump was to point out the weaknesses in our Constitution and make us aware of how much our government depends on norms and traditions in order to function as a democracy. I think of the Constitution as comparable to the Model T automobile, which was an important advance in its time, but which belongs in a museum and not on an interstate highway. Lest we become too self-righteous about other people's idols, let's consider some of our own. Some UU churches display the 7 principles of Unitarian Universalism, soon to be 8, I suppose. According to the Reverend Barbara Wells Tenhove, quote, the principles are not dogma or doctrine, but rather a guide for those of us who choose to join and participate in Unitarian Universalist religious communities, unquote. So, they are just suggestions or recommendations to be followed or not according to our individual choices. That may have been the original intent, but when you frame something and hang it on a wall, or when you print it on wallet-sized cards and encourage your members to always carry it with them, that looks a lot like doctrine to me. If we must display a set of written principles, I would prefer to have them written on a whiteboard with a marker and an eraser nearby. But without a written doctrine, or a set of principles, or guide, or whatever you want to call it, how would we explain ourselves to prospective members? I submit that the set of principles on a wall is no more useful in understanding our church than would be a framed set of the 10 Commandments or the Sermon on the Mount would be in understanding any Christian church. If someone really wanted to know what we are about, I would suggest that that person attend a few services, talk to some members, and participate in some discussion groups. That is the only way you can begin to understand any church, or for that matter, any organized group of people. I began this talk with a Zen koan. I would like to close it with a story that can serve the same purpose as the koan, to promote deeper levels of thought. If anyone would like to think more about the topic of this talk, I would suggest pondering this story. A man is on a quest to find the purpose of life. He has heard of a guru who can enlighten him, so he travels to the other side of the world, to the mountains of Tibet. He climbs an impossibly steep mountain, and at the top he finds an old monk sitting by a fire, sipping from a stone cup of tea. In answer to the man's question, the monk says, "The purpose of life is a good cup of tea." The man is irate. "I've traveled halfway around the world and climbed this mountain," he says, "and you tell me the purpose of life is tea?" The monk looks puzzled and says, "You mean it's not tea?" Okay. Thank you.
Be lords unto yourselves, be your confidence. Hold to the truth within yourselves, as to the only Lamb.
Our offering words are from Kristen Collins, who writes, "We give to remind ourselves how many gifts we have to offer. We give to remember that we are part of something bigger than ourselves. We give because we believe in music and sacred space. We give with the faith that together we have enough. It is second nature and first response, helps bring forth the realm of love. The offering will now be given and gratefully received." For our friends on Zoom, the church mailing address and PayPal link will appear, as if by magic, on your screen.
And Bob, I'd like to ask you to come join me over in this camera view, please. So Bob was here at the church when I got here, so he's been here quite a while and has done a fantastic job of rolling with a whole lot of punches, including agreeing to take on our music coordinator position a number of years ago when we created it, and has been doing a fantastic job at helping us come up with music, finding fantastic people to come play for us and sing for us, and working with our choir, and rolling along with our whole online stuff, finding ways to record music, doing more tech things than I think Bob ever thought he'd be involved in. And so from the music folks, the board, and everyone else here, we want to thank you for being our coordinator for this time. And we hope that we will still be seeing you around doing some music stuff with us here and then when we can make it work. And we have this lovely card, and because it is just so appropriate to Bob, a chalice hat.
Well, I'll put this under right there.
Thank you, Bob. We appreciate your service. And now we extinguish our chalice, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, the fire of commitment. These things we carry in our hearts until we meet again. Our benediction is by Maureen Cologne. As we listen to the blessing of music, may we know this ending as more than a time of goodbye. May the warmth of this community and the memory of our chalice flame sustain our hearts and encourage our minds as we engage the blessings of life's challenges and joys. The service has ended. Your service has begun. Go in peace. Go in joy. Go in love.